Atlanta, Georgia. June. The brilliant summer sunlight streamed through the stained glass windows of First Baptist Church, making the wooden floor shimmer. Maya Johnson stood in front of the mirror in the bridal suite, her hands trembling as she adjusted the pure white veil draped over her intricately braided curls. The silk wedding dress hugged her slender figure, and her smooth, glowing brown skin stood out under the gentle light. Today was the day she had dreamed of since she was a little girl, growing up in a small neighborhood in the south of the city, the day she would become the wife of Ethan Carter, the man she loved deeply. But something felt wrong. Maya could sense it like a cold wind brushing through her heart. The wall clock ticked. It was well past the scheduled start time. Murmurs from the guests outside slipped through the wooden door. She stared into the mirror, her large brown eyes filled with worry. "He'll come right," she asked herself, trying to shake off the ominous feeling. Sarah Mitchell. Maya's best friend stood beside her, forcing a reassuring smile. Dressed in a seafoam green bridesmaid gown, her blonde hair pulled into a high ponytail. Sarah's eyes couldn't hide the unease. "Ethan loves you, Maya. He's probably just stuck in traffic or doing something to make everything perfect," Sarah said, though her voice lacked conviction. Maya pressed her lips together, gripping her bouquet of white carnations tightly. Ethan wasn't the type to be late. He was a millionaire, a businessman with a Swiss watch and a schedule planned to the minute. If he wasn't here, there had to be a reason. She glanced at the phone on the vanity. No calls, no texts. Maya's heart pounded, threatening to burst from her chest. Every second felt like a century. She remembered the night before when they sat on the balcony of Ethan's luxury apartment in Buckhead. He had held her hand, his piercing blue eyes distant. "Are you sure you want to do this, Maya?" he asked, his voice low and unexpected. She had laughed, thinking it was just typical groom nerves. "Of course, Ethan. We love each other, don't we?" she replied, squeezing his hand. He smiled, but it was thin, lacking his usual confidence. At the time, she didn't realize it was a warning sign. The door to the bridal suite burst open, snapping Maya out of her memories. Pastor Thompson stepped in his face. Solemn silver brows furrowed. He cleared his throat, eyes full of regret. "Miss Johnson, I'm very sorry. We've just received word. Mr. Carter won't be coming." His words cut through her like a dagger to the heart. Maya felt her legs go weak, her hand gripping the table's edge to stay upright. "No, there must be a mistake," she whispered, her voice trembling. Tears welled up and spilled over, smudging the carefully applied makeup Sarah had helped her with that morning. Ethan wouldn't do this. He can't. But deep down she knew it was true. The pastor bowed his head, said nothing more, and left her in suffocating silence. Sarah rushed forward, wrapping her arms around Maya. "I'm here, Maya. I'm here," she repeated. But Maya couldn't hear her. Her mind spun with 100 questions. Why? What did I do wrong? She had spent 2 years loving Ethan, enduring judgmental stares from his family, whispers about their racial difference, about how a black girl from a working-class neighborhood could never be worthy of a white millionaire. She had believed their love was strong enough to overcome all of it. But now, all she had left was humiliation. Unable to bear the stifling air of the room, Maya shoved the door open and ran outside. Her long wedding gown tangled at her feet, but she didn't care. She rushed down the church aisle, dozens of guest eyes following her. Some whispered, some looked at her with pity, but no one spoke aloud. Every gaze felt like a needle to her skin. Outside in the parking lot, she stopped panting, her eyes scanning for Ethan, but he wasn't there. Only the blinding sunlight and carefree birdsong, as if the world had no idea her heart was shattering. Maya tilted her head to the sky, trying to hold back tears, but they came anyway, soaking the collar of her dress. She sank onto the curb, her white gown spreading like a pool. The image of her a jilted bride was everything she had never wanted to become. Memories of Ethan flooded her mind, the nights he played piano for her, the times he held her hand under the moonlight, promising her the world. It was all a lie now. Not far away inside a discreetly parked Mercedes, Ethan Carter sat frozen, clutching his phone. He watched Maya from a distance, his heart heavy. His face with blonde hair and chiseled features was now conflicted. In his mind, his mother's voice played like an endless tune. "You can't marry her, Ethan. That girl doesn't belong in our world. Think about your future, about the family's wealth." She had spoken with a chilling coldness, as if Maya were nothing more than an obstacle to remove. Ethan knew he had done the unforgivable. He had let his mother manipulate him and allowed his fear of losing financial security to drown out love. He had picked up the phone, meant to call Maya, to run to the church, but his courage failed each time. He couldn't bear to face her, her devastated eyes or their shared dreams. His hands trembled, and he lowered his head, knowing this moment would change everything forever. Meanwhile, Maya wiped her tears, stood up, and took a deep breath. She wouldn't fall apart in front of everyone. She would not be a victim. Though her heart was shattered, she forced herself to walk heavy, steady steps. She didn't know where she would go, but she knew she had to leave. Leave this place, this city, these memories of Ethan. As she stepped into a taxi, leaving the church and her broken dream behind, she told herself, "I'll survive. Somehow, I'll survive." The morning after the disaster at First Baptist Church, the sun still bathed Atlanta in golden light, but for Maya Johnson, the world felt wrapped in a cold gray fog. She stood inside the small apartment in Vine City, where she and Ethan Carter had once planned a shared future. Scattered across the floor were worn suitcases holding a few pieces of clothing, a family photo frame, and the shattered remains of a dream. With swollen eyes from crying through the night, Maya gripped the doorknob and took a deep breath. She couldn't stay here a minute longer. The gray t-shirt and jeans she wore now had replaced the stunning wedding dress from the day before, but the pain still clung to her like a shadow. She glanced around the apartment one last time, the couch where Ethan used to tell stories about his business trips, the tiny dining table where they laughed over late dinners. Every corner held memories of him, his confident smile, sea blue eyes, and promises that now felt like the wind. "I have to go," Maya whispered to herself, reinforcing her resolve. She dragged her suitcase to the Greyhound station downtown, where hurried travelers came and went, no one noticing the tired black woman with grief written on her face. The sky above Atlanta was clear, but inside, Maya, a storm raged. She bought a ticket to Montgomery, Alabama, a small town her mother had once mentioned as her grandmother's home. She had no plan, only a desperate need to escape the pitying looks of friends, the whispers behind her back, and the ghost of Ethan. Maya took a window seat on the bus, watching Atlanta's skyscrapers shrink in the distance. She clutched her purse, inside of which lay the wedding veil she couldn't bring herself to throw away. The memories of the day before played like a slow-motion film. She remembered the guests' stunned faces as she ran down the church aisle, the murmurs slicing through her pride like blades. She remembered collapsing on the curb, her white gown pooling around her, whispering to herself to be strong, while her heart bled. But the deepest wound came from the unanswered question, why Ethan? She remembered a night 2 weeks ago walking with him along the Chattahoochee River. Ethan had suddenly fallen silent, gripping her hand tighter than usual. "Maya, have you ever wondered if we're moving too fast?" he asked, voice low, eyes avoiding hers. She had laughed, thinking he was just nervous about family pressure. "Too fast. Ethan, we've been in love for 2 years. "What are you afraid of?" She replied, resting her head on his shoulder. He nodded and smiled, but the smile never reached his eyes. Now Maya realized that was when doubt began to sink in. The moment he started to waver under the weight of love and legacy. Elsewhere in a penthouse in Buckhead, Ethan Carter sat on a leather chair, a glass of whiskey in hand, but untouched. His blue eyes were vacant, his blonde hair disheveled, a far cry from the polished businessman everyone knew. Before him, the phone screen glowed with Maya's number, but he couldn't press call. The luxurious room adorned with art and expensive furniture felt suffocating. He remembered yesterday's moment sitting in his Mercedes, watching Maya collapse on the street. He had wanted to run to her to explain, but his mother's voice echoed like a sentence. "That girl doesn't belong in your world, Ethan. You need someone worthy of the Carter name. Think about your future." His mother, Evelyn Carter, was a formidable woman who ran the family's real estate empire with an iron grip. She never accepted Maya, not just because she was black and from a working-class neighborhood, but because she believed Maya could never fit into Atlanta's elite circles. "You'll lose everything if you marry her," she warned coldly when Ethan tried to argue weeks ago. Fearing the loss of his financial support and social status, Ethan faltered. He knew he was being a coward, but he lacked the courage to face Maya or himself. He stood and walked to the window, staring at the glittering city. The image of Maya in her wedding dress flashed in his mind, her eyes full of hope before they shattered. His hand clenched around the glass, guilt burning through him. "What have I done?" he muttered. There was no answer, only the certainty that this moment would haunt him forever. In Montgomery, the bus pulled into a small station as twilight fell. Maya stepped off, dragging her suitcase down a quiet street, searching for a modest place to stay. An elderly black woman with a warm smile rented her a small room at a cheap inn. The room had only a single bed, an old wooden desk, and a window facing an alley. But to Maya, it was a beginning. She placed her suitcase, sat on the bed, and pulled the wedding veil from her bag. She gently touched the delicate fabric, tears falling in silence. Then she folded it and tucked it into a drawer. No more weakness. "I'm starting over," she whispered. The next day, Maya found work at a local cafe where the smell of freshly baked cookies and the buzz of conversations made her feel a little less alone. She tied on an apron and smiled at customers, though her heart remained heavy. Every tip brought her one step closer to independence. That evening, she called Sarah, the only person who knew where she'd gone. "Are you okay, Maya?" Sarah asked, her voice thick with concern. "I will be," Maya replied, though she wasn't sure. Sarah mentioned the rumors still swirling in Atlanta, but Maya cut her off. "I don't want to hear about them. I want to forget." But forgetting was more complicated than she imagined. As moonlight filtered through the window each night, Maya thought of Ethan. She wondered what he was doing, if he regretted anything, or if he had returned to his life of wealth without looking back. She thought of the judgmental stares from his family, especially Evelyn, who had looked at her like an outsider. But more than anything, she thought of herself, the woman who once believed love could conquer all. Now she had to find a new version of Maya, stronger, braver. She reached into her suitcase and took a framed photo, one of her and her mother from an old picnic years ago. "Mom, I can do this," she whispered, as if her mother were there. She didn't know what the future held, but she knew one thing for sure: there was no going back. Montgomery would be where she rebuilt herself, one uncertain step at a time. Montgomery, Alabama, late summer. The hot, humid air clung to every narrow street. Maya Johnson stepped out of Corner Brew Cafe, where she worked 6 days a week, her green apron dusted with flour. Her brown skin glistened with sweat under the sunlight, but her large brown eyes now appeared dulled by exhaustion. It had been 2 months since she left Atlanta, leaving behind the wedding dress and the shattered pieces of her heart. Maya had tried to build a new life, but lately her body seemed whispering that something was off. Each morning, she woke with nausea, her stomach twisting as if gripped by an unseen hand. She was so fatigued, she had to take breaks mid-shift, something unheard of for someone who once prided herself on her endurance. At first, Maya blamed stress, sleepless nights spent thinking about Ethan Carter, and long days working to pay rent for her small room. But as the dizziness and strange hunger persisted, a chilling intuition took hold. It can't be, she told herself yet. The suspicion kept growing. That evening after her shift, Maya stopped by a small pharmacy on Dexter Avenue. She stood before the shelf of pregnancy tests, her hand trembling as she picked up a pale blue box. The cashier, a middle-aged black woman with a warm smile, looked at her as if wanting to ask something, but Maya shook her head, paid, and left quickly. Back in her rented room with its single bed and a window facing a narrow alley, she locked the door and sat on the worn wooden floor. The test box lay in front of her like an unspoken question. She took a deep breath, trying to push away the image of Ethan, the man she had once loved, the one who had left her at the altar without a single word. In the flickering fluorescent light of the tiny bathroom, Maya stared at the test. After a few minutes of waiting, 2 red lines appeared clearly. Her heart stopped for a second, then began pounding so hard it felt like it might burst. "I'm pregnant," she whispered, her voice cracking. Tears welled up, not from sorrow, but from a tangled flood of fear and a fragile glimmer of hope. She sank to the floor, hugging her knees, her mind spinning. A single mother, in a strange town with little savings and no family nearby. But deep in her soul, she felt a new strength. This baby was a part of her, a reason to keep going. That night, Maya called Sarah Mitchell, her best friend back in Atlanta. Over the phone, Sarah's voice was filled with concern. "Are you okay, Maya? Is something wrong?" Maya hesitated, then told her about the test. There was silence on the line. Then Sarah responded, "You can do this, Maya. You're stronger than you think. I'll visit as soon as I can." Sarah shared her story, how she had once been a single mom before meeting her husband, and promised to support Maya however she could. The call eased Maya's loneliness, but she knew the road ahead would be anything but easy. Maya requested half a day off to visit the Montgomery Community Clinic the next morning. In the cramped waiting room, she sat among other expectant mothers, mostly Black or Latino women, chatting warmly about children and life. Maya remained silent, gripping her handbag tightly, trying not to think of Ethan. She wondered if he would even care to know she was pregnant. But then she shook her head. He had chosen to walk away, and she would not let him dictate her future. When the doctor, an older white woman with a gentle smile, called her in, Maya lay on the ultrasound table, her heart pounding. The black and white screen flickered with blurry images, and the doctor's smile suddenly widened. "Congratulations, Miss Johnson," she said warmly. "You're expecting quadruplets." Maya blinked, thinking she had misheard. "4. What do you mean?" she asked, her voice shaking. "Quadruplets," the doctor replied, pointing to the screen, where 4 tiny shapes were visible. "It's rare, but all 4 appear to be healthy." The world tilted. 1 child would have been a challenge, but 4. Maya looked at the doctor, her vision blurred with tears. "How can I raise 4 children? I'm just a cafe worker," she whispered, not realizing she had spoken aloud. The doctor took her hand, her voice steady. "You'll find a way, Maya. Mothers always do. We'll connect you with community support programs." Those words were like a beam of light, helping Maya collect herself. Maya walked into the sunset outside the clinic, filled with fear and determination. She thought of her mother, who had raised her alone in Vine City, despite all the odds. If Mom could do it, so can I, she told herself. She stopped by the social assistance office, registered for single mother support, and was guided through food and healthcare programs. It wasn't much, but it was a beginning. Maya opened a drawer in her room and took out her wedding veil. She had once seen it as a symbol of pain, but now she looked at it differently. The child, no, the 4 children inside her, were a reason to be strong. She folded the veil carefully, placed it back in the drawer, and pulled out a small notebook. She began writing a list of things to do, from finding a larger home to saving money. This tiny room was too small for a family of 5. That night, as moonlight streamed through the window, Maya placed her hand on her belly, feeling a miraculous connection. "You are your mother's hope," she whispered. She didn't know how to face this challenge, but knew she wouldn't give up. Deep inside, she felt a light, not because of Ethan, but because of herself and the unborn lives growing within her. With its quiet streets and warm community, Montgomery would be where she built her family, even if she had to do it alone. That winter, Montgomery, Alabama was veiled in a thin layer of mist, as if trying to hide the struggles of Maya Johnson. In the delivery room of the community hospital, she gripped a nurse's hand tightly, sweat rolling down her forehead. The quadruplet birth was long and grueling, the beeping of machines blending with Maya's ragged breaths. But her heart seemed to burst open when the first cry rang out, followed by 3 more. 4 baby boys, Isaiah, Caleb, Jacob, and Daniel, were born healthy, each tiny but full of life. Exhausted Maya held each one to her chest, tears streaming down her face. "You are everything to me," she whispered, overwhelmed by a love she had never known. The first months were a whirlwind. Maya moved from her tiny rented room to a modest house on the outskirts of Montgomery, thanks to community support and savings from her job at Corner Brew Cafe. The house was old with creaky wooden floors and windows that sometimes stuck shut, but it was spacious enough for 5. She lined up 4 second-hand cribs bought from a flea market in the living room, where the smell of formula and infant cries became the new soundtrack of her life. Each night, Maya stayed awake, changing diapers, feeding, and rocking them to sleep, sometimes only catching a few hours of rest before the next day began. Finances were a heavy burden. Her cafe wages barely covered rent and basic groceries, so Maya started selling second-hand clothes and household items online. She made use of every available single mother support program from food stamps to medical coverage, but still faced a constant pile of bills. There were days she stood before an almost empty fridge, wondering how to feed 4 rapidly growing boys. But every time she looked into the eyes of Isaiah, Caleb, Jacob, and Daniel, she found the will to keep going. Sarah Mitchell, her best friend from Atlanta, became a vital emotional anchor. Sarah visited shortly after the babies were born, bringing a suitcase full of baby clothes and an old coffee machine. Sitting in the messy living room among diapers and bottles, Sarah shared her experience raising a child alone before meeting her husband. "It will all be worth it, Maya. These kids are miracles," Sarah said, hugging Maya as she broke down from exhaustion. Sarah stayed for a week helping Maya organize the house and teaching her how to cook cheap but nutritious meals. Their friendship, forged through hardship, became a well of strength Maya drew from during the darkest days. The Montgomery community also reached out to Maya. Mrs. Clara, her former landlady, often dropped by with home-cooked meals, cornbread stews, and other comforts. Other mothers at the community clinic shared parenting tips from calming colicky babies to diaper-saving tricks. Once, when Daniel had a high fever, an elderly black neighbor, Mr. Henry, drove Maya and the baby to the hospital in the middle of the night. These small acts didn't erase the hardships, but reminded Maya she wasn't alone. But not every day brought light. Some nights after the boys had fallen asleep, Maya sat alone in the dark, gripped by fear and loneliness. She thought of Ethan, wondering how he was living now, in his world of luxury. Did he know about the children? Did he care? She recalled his expression the last time they spoke when he asked if she was sure about the wedding. The pain was still there, but she buried it, focusing on her sons. I don't need him, she told herself, though sometimes she wished for someone to share the weight. Each child began to show their unique personality, lighting up Maya's days. Isaiah, the oldest, was endlessly curious, always reaching for everything within grasp. Caleb was shy, clinging to his mother with big, soulful eyes. Jacob was the artist, laughing loudly whenever the old radio played music. The smallest, Daniel, was the strongest, always trying to roll over in his crib. Watching them grow, Maya felt joy mixed with overwhelming responsibility. She hung a photo on the wall herself, holding the 4 babies in the hospital, a reminder of why she fought each day. One afternoon, when the boys were 6 months old, Maya got a call from Sarah. I just heard a rumor in Atlanta, Sarah said, hesitantly. Ethan is dating someone, the daughter of one of the Carter family's business partners. Maya was silent momentarily, a sharp pang rising in her chest, but it quickly passed. Let him live his life, she replied calmly. But after hanging up, she looked at her 4 sons playing on the carpet and knew they were her entire world. Ethan may have abandoned her, but she would never leave them. Maya began planning for the long term. She enrolled in an online accounting course, hoping to find more stable work in the future. She also joined a local church's single mothers support group, where she found empathy and practical advice. Life remained difficult, but Maya felt herself moving forward step by step. Her little house, though humble, was filled with laughter and love. Every smile from Isaiah, every hug from Caleb, every joyful shout from Jacob, and every determined gaze from Daniel affirmed that she was doing the right thing. When spring brought gentle rains, Maya stood at her doorstep, watching her 4 children play in the small yard. She thought of her mother, who had raised her in poverty, but taught her to hold her head high. I'll make you proud, Mama, she whispered. Though the road ahead was still long, Maya knew she could face whatever came because of her children and the strength she had found within herself. One autumn afternoon in 2025, Oak Grove Park in Montgomery, Alabama, glowed in golden and amber hues from falling maple leaves. Maya Johnson pushed a double stroller, while Isaiah and Jacob, 2 of her 4 quintuplet sons, ran ahead, laughing, their giggles echoing through the crisp air. The shyest Caleb clung tightly to her hand, while Daniel, though only 5, tried to pull his brothers into a game of tag. Maya's brown skin shimmered gently in the soft sunlight, but her eyes revealed a mix of exhaustion and joy. 5 years of single motherhood had shaped her into a resilient woman, but today, she just wanted her children to play, to forget the weight of her responsibilities. The park buzzed with families, the joyful screams of children, and the aroma of grilled bread wafting from a nearby food stand. Maya sat on a wooden bench, pulling Caleb into her lap, smiling, as she watched Isaiah try to climb the slide. She reached into her bag, took out a cookie, and handed it to Daniel, who was busy digging in the dirt with a stick. Her life now revolved around these 4 boys, Isaiah the curious one, Caleb the sensitive soul, Jacob the mischievous one, and Daniel the bold. Despite the sleepless nights and looming bills, their smiles were her reason for never giving up. Suddenly, a familiar figure appeared at the park's far end, making Maya's heart stop. Ethan Carter, blonde hair, navy blue suit, stood near a coffee cart speaking to someone. He didn't look much different from 5 years ago, still tall, sharply handsome, but something tired lingered in his icy blue eyes. Maya felt the blood rush to her head, and her breath quickened. She never imagined she'd see him again. Not here, not after everything he'd done, leaving her at the altar in Atlanta, abandoning her in shame, and with 4 unborn children. She sprang to her feet, pulling Caleb closer and calling out loudly, "Isaiah! Jacob, Daniel, come here! We're going home!" Her voice was louder than usual, tinged with panic. The boys looked puzzled. Jacob frowned. "But Mom, we just got here." But the stern look in Maya's eyes silenced any protest. She gathered their things, her heart pounding, desperate to leave before Ethan could see them. Too late. Ethan turned his gaze, casually scanning the park until it landed on the children gathered around Maya. He froze as if struck. 4 boys with dark curly hair and faces eerily familiar to him, laughing, chasing, playing. The resemblance was unmistakable. He dropped his coffee cup and began striding toward Maya, leaving his bewildered colleague behind. "Maya," he called, his voice deep and trembling with emotion. Maya turned her back, pretending not to hear, dragging the stroller and urging her children to move faster. But Ethan was already behind her, stepping in front of her path. "Maya, wait, please," he said, voice pleading. She stopped, not because she wanted to, but because she had no choice. She turned to face him, her eyes cold, but visibly shaking. "Ethan," she said flatly, "what do you want?" Ethan looked from her to the boys, who were now staring curiously. Isaiah, the closest, tilted his head and asked Mom, "Who's that man?" Caleb clung to Maya's leg. Jacob and Daniel stopped playing, their eyes wary. Ethan crouched, trying to smile at Isaiah, but his eyes never left Maya. They're my sons, aren't they?" he asked, voice cracking, as if he'd just realized a painful truth. Maya clenched her fists, rage and fear rising all at once. She had imagined this moment 100 times, the day Ethan would find out about the children, but never like this. "Yes, they're my children," she said, emphasizing my. "But you don't have the right to ask that, Ethan. You left. You mean nothing to them." Her words were a blade. Ethan stood up slowly, his hands trembling. He looked at the boys, his boys, and saw himself in each one, the pale blue eyes, the small nose, the smile his mother used to call the Carter signature. "Maya, I didn't know you were pregnant," he said hoarsely. "If I had known, I would have." "Would have what?" Maya cut him off, her voice sharp. "Come back. Apologize. You left me at the altar, Ethan, in front of everyone. You don't deserve to know them." She turned, pulling her children along. But Isaiah, full of childlike wonder, looked back at Ethan. "Mom, why are you mad at him?" he asked, innocence halting Maya's steps. Ethan seized the moment, stepping closer. "Maya, please talk to me. 5 minutes. That's all I ask," he pleaded. But Maya shook her head, her eyes firm. "No, Ethan. These kids are my world. You don't get to walk back into their lives just because you saw them today." She led the children toward the parking lot, leaving Ethan alone, eyes full of pain and regret. Once the children were buckled in the car, Maya gripped the steering wheel tightly, trying to steady her breathing. "Was that your friend, Mommy?" Jacob asked. Caleb whispered, "I don't like him." Maya forced a smile and reassured them. "Don't worry, sweethearts. Just someone Mommy used to know. Let's go home and have dinner, okay?" But inside, she knew everything had changed. Ethan had seen the boys, and she feared he wouldn't walk away so easily this time. Meanwhile, Ethan returned to his black SUV parked near the park, sitting motionless in the driver's seat. He thought of the past years living in the luxury of Atlanta, but not a night passed without thinking of Maya. He had tried to find her through social media and mutual friends, but she had vanished. And now, knowing she had raised 4 children, his children alone, he felt guilt crash over him like a mountain. He pulled out his phone, ready to call his mother, then stopped. He muttered, "I have to do the right thing," though he wasn't sure what that meant. Back home in her small suburban house, Maya held her children tightly, as if trying to shield them from the past. But Isaiah's curious glance, his innocent question, "Why are you mad at him?" echoed in her mind. Whether she liked it or not, she knew this encounter was only the beginning of a new storm. Night fell over the small house on the outskirts of Montgomery, Alabama. A warm yellow light glowed from the living room, casting soft shadows on the patchy walls. Maya Johnson sat in an old armchair, cradling Caleb, the shyest of her 4 quintuplet sons, in her lap. Isaiah, Jacob, and Daniel sprawled out on the rug, surrounded by a pile of building blocks, but their eyes were distant, unfocused. The unexpected encounter with Ethan Carter that afternoon at Oak Grove Park left a lingering question in the boys' minds, and Maya could feel the tension subtly filling the room. Isaiah, the most curious of them all, was the first to break the silence. He looked up, his dark curls falling over his forehead, and asked Mom, "Who was that man at the park? Why were you mad at him?" The innocent yet piercing question made Maya freeze. She looked into Isaiah's pale blue eyes, identical to Ethan's, and felt her heart tighten. Caleb pressed closer to her, whispering, "I don't want him to come back. He scares me." Jacob, the playful one, wrinkled his nose. He looked at us weird, like he wanted something. Only Daniel, ever the bold one, shrugged. "I don't care, Mom's enough for me." Maya forced a smile, keeping her voice steady. "Don't worry, sweethearts. He's just someone Mommy used to know. He's not important. Now, who wants a cookie before bed?" She hoped the vague answer would extinguish their curiosity, but Isaiah's eyes remained fixed on her, as if he sensed she was hiding something. Maya stood up, guiding the children into the kitchen and retrieving a cookie tin Mrs. Clara, their kind neighbor, had dropped off that morning. Still deep down, Maya knew she couldn't avoid this forever. The boys had seen Ethan, and the truth about their father would eventually come to light. While the boys nibbled on cookies, Maya returned to the living room and sank into the armchair, her hands gripping her head. She replayed the moment at the park, Ethan kneeling before Isaiah, eyes filled with remorse and longing. She had wanted to scream at him, make him feel the pain she had endured raising 4 children alone. But more than anything, she was afraid that Ethan might try to wedge his way into their lives, threatening the stability she had built through sweat and tears. She remembered sleepless nights, feeding them, rushing Daniel to the ER with a high fever, and the bills that forced her to sell her mother's last silver ring. Ethan had no right to show up now and demand anything. She picked up her phone and texted her best friend Sarah Mitchell in Atlanta. "Ethan showed up today. He saw the boys. I don't know what to do." Sarah replied immediately, "Breathe. He has no right after what he did. If you need me, I'll come. You're stronger than he thinks." Sarah's words were comforting, but Maya still couldn't sleep that night. She lay awake, listening to the soft breathing of her children in the next room, wondering if Ethan had truly changed, or if the sight of them simply shook him. At the same time, in a penthouse apartment in Atlanta, Ethan Carter sat in darkness, the glow of his laptop screen reflecting off his face. He had searched for Maya online, but found only a few old social media posts. She had vanished from Atlanta like a ghost. And now he knew why she had been raising 4 children. His children. He opened a bottle of wine but didn't drink. He just clutched the glass, his mind spinning with images of the 4 boys at the park. Isaiah's curious stare, Caleb clinging to Maya, Jacob's loud laugh, Daniel's firm gaze. They were his sons, yet he knew nothing about them. He thought back over the past 5 years, living among the glittering elite of Atlanta. None of the lavish parties, million-dollar deals, or fleeting relationships filled the hollow space inside him. He had tried to forget Maya, but his chest ached every time her name came up. He had even visited Vine City and stood outside her old apartment, but hadn't dared to knock. He was afraid of the pain he'd caused, of seeing the anger in her eyes. But now, after seeing the children, he couldn't run anymore. He thought of his mother, Evelyn Carter, the woman who had forced him to cancel the wedding. "She doesn't belong in our world," she'd said, her voice cold as stone. And he had obeyed, afraid of losing the family fortune and status. But 5 years later, he realized the actual cost: a life without love, without family. He picked up his phone and typed a message to Maya. "I'm sorry. I want to talk. Please give me a chance." But before he could send it, he deleted it. He knew Maya wouldn't forgive easily. He would have to prove he deserved even a conversation. The next morning, tension still lingered in Maya's home. While having breakfast, Isaiah asked again, "Mom, is that man coming back? He looked sad when he saw you." Maya paused mid-pour the milk carton hovering over Caleb's bowl. She didn't want to drag the children into this, but she also couldn't lie. "I don't know, sweetheart," she said gently. "But no matter what happens, I promise I will always protect you." Caleb looked at her with worried eyes. "He's not going to take us away, right, Mom?" Maya hugged him close. "No one is taking you away from me." Jacob, always lighthearted, piped up, "If he comes back, I'll throw my ball at him." Daniel nodded. "Yeah, we don't need him." Maya laughed, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. She knew they were too young to understand, but their curiosity and concern were clear signs she would have to face Ethan sooner than she wanted. She couldn't let him barge in and disrupt her children's lives, but she also couldn't ignore the truth: he was their father. Later, as she dropped the kids off at daycare, Maya stood by the gate, watching them run into class, her heart heavy. She thought of her mother, who had taught her to face hardship without needing anyone else. She told herself, "I won't let Ethan destroy what I've built." But deep down, she feared this was only the beginning of a much larger battle. 1 week after the unexpected encounter at Oak Grove Park, Maya Johnson stood in the kitchen of her small house on the outskirts of Montgomery, Alabama, her hands trembling as she held a white envelope. The flickering fluorescent light overhead cast a pale glow on her smooth brown face, where her wide eyes now reflected a storm of worry and anger. The envelope, sent from a law firm in Atlanta, contained an official request from Ethan Carter. He wanted visitation rights for the 4 quintuplets: Isaiah, Caleb, Jacob, and Daniel. Maya gripped the envelope tightly, feeling like the floor collapsed beneath her. She sat at the dining table where the boys' plastic bowls were scattered from dinner. Isaiah and Jacob laughed from the living room where they played with building blocks, while Caleb and Daniel quietly watched an old cartoon. Maya watched them through the doorway, her heart heavy. Despite hardship, she had built a stable life for them through late-night shifts and community assistance. And now Ethan, the man who had left her at the altar 5 years ago, dared to demand a place in their lives. "Who does he think he is?" she whispered, her voice laced with fury. Maya called Sarah Mitchell her best friend, and now an attorney in Atlanta. Sarah, Ethan sent a legal letter. "He wants visitation rights," Maya said, trying to keep her voice steady. Sarah sighed on the other end. "I was afraid this would happen. He has money, Maya, and a team of sharp lawyers. But you have something more substantial. You've raised those boys from the beginning. I'll fly down to Montgomery this weekend to help you." Sarah promised to review the letter and prepare a legal strategy, though her tone betrayed concern over the financial disparity between Maya and Ethan. A few days later, a second letter arrived, a court summons requesting Maya to appear in Montgomery County Court to discuss custody. Her blood surged with heat, but she didn't let the children notice. She continued to take them to daycare, worked her shifts at Corner Brew Cafe, and attended her online accounting classes at night. But when alone, she couldn't stop thinking about Ethan. His remorseful eyes at the park, his pleading voice asking for just 5 minutes. She wondered if he genuinely wanted to be a father, or was trying to ease his guilt. Sarah arrived on Friday evening carrying a small suitcase and her usual reassuring smile. Sitting in the living room surrounded by toys and picture books, Sarah reviewed the legal documents. Ethan's requesting regular visitation, she explained seriously, but he's also implying he might seek joint custody if you don't cooperate. Maya buried her face in her hands. Joint custody. He's never changed a diaper or stayed up when Daniel had a fever. He knows nothing about these kids. Sarah took her hand. We'll prove that in court. You're their mother, Maya. No one can replace you. The first court hearing was held at Montgomery County Courthouse, a red brick building with cold, echoing halls. Maya, wearing a navy coat and jeans, walked in beside Sarah feeling like a lamb stepping into a lion's den. Ethan sat in an expensive gray suit across the courtroom beside a sharp-eyed, middle-aged attorney. He looked at Maya, eyes filled with regret and determination, but she turned away and focused on Sarah. Ethan's attorney, Mr. Bradley, opened smoothly. My client, Mr. Ethan Carter, is a successful businessman with substantial financial resources. He can provide these children a better life, top-tier education, medical care, and a stable environment. He emphasized that Ethan hadn't known about the children until recently and wished to make things right by becoming involved in their lives. Maya clenched her fists beneath the table, her anger simmering. Better, she thought. Does he believe money can buy their love? Sarah rose next, her voice steady but impassioned. Your Honor, Ms. Maya Johnson has raised 4 children independently for 5 years, despite financial hardship and Mr. Carter's complete absence. She works 2 jobs, participates in community programs, and has created a loving home. Mr. Carter may have wealth, but Ms. Johnson has something more valuable, a deep, irreplaceable bond with her sons. Sarah presented evidence, medical bills, certificates from single mother support groups, and letters from the daycare praising Maya's dedication. The judge, an older black woman with sharp eyes, listened attentively to both sides. She ordered a court-appointed social worker to evaluate the living environments of both Maya and Ethan before making a final decision. As the hearing ended, Maya felt a mix of relief and dread. She had done everything for her sons, but Ethan's wealth was a threat that couldn't be ignored. Ethan approached the courthouse hallway while Sarah spoke with a clerk. Maya, I want to do the right thing, he said quietly. I'm not trying to take them from you. Maya looked him square in the eye, her voice cold. The right thing would have been not leaving me 5 years ago, Ethan. Don't expect me to believe your pretty words now. She turned away, pulling Sarah along, but Ethan's remorseful gaze lingered in her mind. Back home, Maya hugged her children tightly, shielding them from the storm ahead. Where were you all day, Mommy? Isaiah asked. She smiled, brushing his hair. I'm just handling a few things, sweetheart. But when the boys were asleep, she sat alone in the kitchen, staring at the legal envelope on the table. She knew this battle wouldn't be easy, but she would do whatever it took to keep her children with her, even if it meant standing against Ethan and the entire world. Early morning in Montgomery, Alabama. A cool breeze carried the scent of freshly cut grass from the small yard of Maya Johnson's home. She stood in the kitchen brewing coffee in the old machine Sarah Mitchell had gifted her, while her 4 quintuplet sons, Isaiah, Caleb, Jacob, and Daniel, ate toast with strawberry jam. Jacob's laughter, as he told a silly story, eased some of the tension in Maya's heart, but the court letter on the table remained a thorn impossible to ignore. The legal battle with Ethan Carter, who had suddenly resurfaced demanding visitation rights, was turning into a nightmare. Maya drove her children to daycare, her eyes scanning the familiar streets of Montgomery, where the community had become her anchor through 5 years of single motherhood. But today, a strange unease sat heavy in her chest. At the courthouse the week before, she had noticed a woman standing beside Ethan, blonde hair, an expensive business dress, and cold eyes. Sarah, Maya's best friend and lawyer, had whispered, That's Lauren Bennett, Ethan's fiancée. She's not someone to underestimate. Maya didn't want to dwell on it, but instinct told her Lauren was trouble. In Atlanta, inside a sleek law firm with glass windows overlooking the skyline, Ethan sat across from attorney Bradley, gripping a stack of documents. He looked tired, his blonde hair unkempt, a far cry from the confident businessman image he usually projected. "I want to be a father, Mr. Bradley," Ethan said, his voice low. "I'm not trying to take the kids from Maya." Bradley nodded, but his eyes were sharp. "We need to show that Ms. Johnson isn't fit to raise 4 children. Lauren has suggested a few strategies." Ethan frowned, uncomfortable with attacking Maya, but he didn't object. He remained torn between remorse and pressure from Lauren, who constantly urged him to take back what's yours. Lauren Bennett, with her perfect smile and quiet ambition, was not just Ethan's fiancée. She was the daughter of one of the Carter family's business partners, and Ethan's mother, Evelyn, had seen her as the ideal match ever since Maya was pushed out of his life. Lauren wanted Ethan to win custody to secure her place within the Carter legacy and erase Maya, an inconvenient shadow from the past. And so she moved subtly but ruthlessly. A few days later, Maya received a message from another daycare parent. A local social media article was spreading titled, "Single Mother Prevents Wealthy Father from Reuniting with His Children." The article painted Maya as selfish, keeping the children from Ethan to exploit his wealth. Her hands trembled as she read it, the words stinging like a slap. She immediately called Sarah. "Who did this?" "Sarah, this isn't true." Sarah, still in Atlanta, responded. "I suspect Lauren. She's playing dirty. I'll investigate." At daycare, Maya noticed wary glances from some parents. A once friendly mother now avoided her altogether. She stayed calm, holding Caleb, as he nervously asked Mom, "Why didn't Miss Jenny smile at you today?" Maya stroked his hair, forcing a smile. "She's probably just busy, sweetheart." But inside, she knew the rumors were spreading, and they could impact the outcome of the upcoming court ruling. Sarah flew into Montgomery over the weekend, carrying a folder full of documents. Sitting in Maya's cluttered living room, surrounded by toys and picture books, she explained. The article doesn't cite any sources, but was published on a site linked to a small media company in Atlanta. "I'm tracking any connections to Lauren. She's trying to discredit you before the social worker's visit." Maya took her hand, her voice steady. "I won't let her win. These boys are my whole life." The court-appointed social worker, Ms. Linda Harris, visited Maya's home on a bright morning. Maya had cleaned thoroughly and prepared cornbread and juice as a welcoming gesture. Ms. Harris, a black woman with warm, observant eyes, chatted with the children. Isaiah excitedly showed his drawing, Jacob told a joke, and Daniel proudly pointed to a bookshelf their mother had built, though clutching his mother's hand, even shy. Caleb answered questions when asked. Ms. Harris took notes and nodded approvingly. "Ms. Johnson, your boys are happy. You're doing a fine job." Maya exhaled deeply, but she knew Ms. Harris would also be visiting Ethan's home. At Ethan's upscale Atlanta apartment, Lauren had orchestrated the perfect visit. She hired decorators to furnish a children's room with brand new toys, hardcover books, and a stylish bunk bed, none of which had ever been touched by Ethan's sons. Ms. Harris arrived, noting the wealth on display, but her gaze was sharper than Lauren expected. When Lauren answered questions for Ethan about the parenting plan, Ms. Harris raised a brow. "I'd like to hear from Mr. Carter directly." Ethan, flustered, replied, I want them to have the best of everything. I'll learn how to be a father." However, his inexperience showed, and Lauren's controlling demeanor did not go unnoticed. Back home, Maya tucked her sons into bed, reading them a bedtime story, like she did every night. Isaiah looked up and asked, "Mom, does the man from the park want to see us again?" Maya hesitated, then replied softly, "Maybe, but I'll always be here with you." She kissed each of them goodnight, turned off the light, and then sat in the kitchen, staring at the article on her phone. She knew Lauren was trying to destroy her reputation, but she wasn't about to surrender. With Sarah by her side, and the love she held for her children, Maya was ready to fight, no matter how rough the road ahead would be. The Montgomery County Courthouse, Alabama courtroom was stifling that morning, despite the air conditioning running at full blast. Maya Johnson sat upright on the wooden bench, her hands clasped tightly in her lap, her brown skin glowing faintly under the fluorescent lights. Beside her, Sarah Mitchell, best friend and lawyer, organized a stack of documents, her eyes sharp and focused, like a warrior ready for battle. Across from them, Ethan Carter sat in a deep navy suit next to Attorney Bradley and his fiancée, Lauren Bennett, her blonde hair gleaming, her smile tense and brittle. Maya avoided Ethan's gaze, but she could feel it, a mix of regret and tension radiating from him. Today's hearing marked a turning point in the custody dispute over the 4 quintuplet boys, Isaiah, Caleb, Jacob, and Daniel. Maya had spent sleepless nights, not only fearing the loss of custody, but also the damaging rumors Lauren had spread, threatening her reputation as a single black mother in the Montgomery community. But Sarah had prepared a surprise, and Maya hoped it would change everything. Judge Virginia Thompson, a commanding black woman with a dignified presence, struck her gavel and opened the session. Attorney Bradley rose, his tone polished. "Your Honor, my client, Mr. Ethan Carter, only recently became aware of the existence of his children. He is fully prepared to offer them a better life quality education, a spacious home, and financial stability, which Ms. Johnson with limited income cannot reasonably provide." Maya clenched her fists, fury rising within. She thought that money couldn't buy love, glancing at Sarah, who nodded in encouragement. Sarah stood, her voice steady and clear. "Your Honor, Ms. Maya Johnson has raised these 4 boys alone for 5 years, despite financial hardship and Mr. Carter's total absence. She is a devoted mother and the emotional foundation of her children's lives. Today we will demonstrate that Mr. Carter didn't merely walk away. He was manipulated into doing so." A ripple of whispers stirred in the courtroom. Maya saw Ethan's brow furrow in confusion, unprepared. Sarah called the first witness, Mrs. Rosa Delgado. The Carter family's former housekeeper entered the courtroom, slowly leaning on her cane, but her eyes were sharp and steady. A Latina woman in her 70s, she had worked for the Carter family for over 2 decades. Under Sarah's guidance, she testified, "I saw Mrs. Evelyn Carter, Ethan's mother, force him to cancel the wedding with Miss Maya. She said Maya was unworthy and that she would ruin the family's future. Mrs. Evelyn threatened to cut Ethan off financially if he didn't obey." The courtroom went silent, broken only by the court clerk's pen scratching. Maya's chest tightened. She had long suspected Evelyn's interference, but hearing it confirmed it hit like a punch. Ethan bowed his head, gripping the table's edge, his face pale. Lauren beside him maintained her composure, but her hands were trembling slightly. Sarah pressed further. "Mrs. Delgado, was anyone else involved in this?" Rosa nodded. "Ms. Lauren Bennett. She often visited the Carter house before the wedding. I overheard her speaking privately with Mrs. Evelyn. She said Maya was trouble, and Ethan should get rid of her. She encouraged him to call off the engagement." The room buzzed with murmurs. Ethan turned to Lauren, shock and anger in his voice. "Is that true?" "Lauren." Lauren shot up from her seat, voice shrill. "That's a lie. I had nothing to do with that." But the panic in her eyes didn't escape Judge Thompson, who banged her gavel firmly to restore order. Ethan stared at Lauren, doubt clouding his face. Maya, though pained by the revelation, felt a wave of clarity. Finally, she understood Ethan hadn't just been cowardly. He'd been manipulated by those closest to him. Sarah presented further evidence: Rose's handwritten journal documenting meetings between Lauren and Evelyn, and an old email from Lauren to Evelyn with the line, "We need to ensure Ethan does the right thing." The judge noted and called for a recess to review the new information. As Maya exited the courtroom with Sarah, she felt a weight lift from her shoulders, though she knew the fight wasn't over. Back home, Maya held her children close, reading their bedtime stories like every night. Isaiah, ever curious, asked Mom, "Where did you go today? Was it to see the man from the park?" Maya hesitated, then answered gently, "I was taking care of a few things, sweetheart, but I promise everything will be okay." Caleb nestled closer, whispering, "I don't want to go with him." Maya kissed his forehead, reassuring him, "No one is taking you away from me." After the boys fell asleep, Maya sat in the kitchen and texted Sarah, "Thank you. Today was a big step." Sarah replied, "We're not done yet, but Lauren is losing her ground." "You're strong, Maya." Maya looked up at the framed photo on the wall, her and the 4 boys in the hospital the day they were born, and felt a new surge of determination. The truth was now exposed, but she knew Ethan wouldn't give up easily, and Lauren might strike back. In Atlanta, Ethan sat untouched in his penthouse apartment, a glass of whiskey in hand. He stared at the shimmering city lights, but his thoughts were heavy. Rosa's words echoed. Lauren had helped destroy his future with Maya. He confronted Lauren by phone, his tone cold. "You knew what happened, didn't you?" Lauren tried to deny it, but her faltering voice only deepened his suspicions. Ethan ended the call, wondering if it was still possible to make things right with Maya and his sons. Autumn in Montgomery, Alabama, brought crisp winds that sent golden leaves drifting along the street, leading to Maya Johnson's small house. On a quiet Saturday afternoon, Maya stood on the porch, her eyes watchful, as Ethan Carter stepped out of a black SUV. He wore a light blue shirt and jeans, far from the expensive suit he'd worn in court, holding a small gift bag in one hand. The 4 quintuplets, Isaiah, Caleb, Jacob, and Daniel, were playing ball in the yard, their eyes flicking toward Ethan with curiosity and caution. After the courtroom revelations about his mother's and Lauren Bennett's manipulation, Ethan had been granted supervised visitation, and today was the first time. Maya crossed her arms, still full of doubt. She had agreed to let Ethan see the boys only because the court required it, and because she didn't want them growing up feeling abandoned by their father. "Don't do anything foolish, Ethan," she said, her voice low but firm. Ethan nodded, the sincerity in his blue eyes unmistakable. "I want to be with them, Maya. Thank you for giving me this chance." She didn't respond, only motioned toward the yard where the boys had paused to watch. Isaiah, the most curious of the boys, was the first to approach. "What's in the bag?" he asked, pointing at the gift. Ethan smiled and crouched to meet his gaze, pulling out a science book about the universe. "You like to learn, don't you? This might be your thing." Isaiah took the book and flipped through a few pages, his eyes lighting up, though he kept a careful distance. Jacob, always the mischievous one, ran over. "What about us?" Ethan handed him a soccer ball, gave Daniel a puzzle set, and offered Caleb, the shyest of them, a box of crayons. Caleb clutched the box tightly and hid behind Maya, whispering a soft, "Thank you," without looking up. Maya watched from the porch, fingers gripping the hem of her shirt. She saw the boys gradually warming up to Ethan, though Caleb remained withdrawn, his worried eyes betraying the fear of being hurt again. She remembered his question after their first encounter with Ethan in the park. "He's not going to take us away, right, Mom?" She promised herself she wouldn't let Ethan disrupt their lives again, no matter how sincere he seemed. Ethan sat on the grass, kicking the ball with Jacob and Daniel, while Isaiah read nearby. He asked them about school and what they liked and listened attentively. When Jacob told him about scraping his knee at the playground, Ethan chuckled. "I felt like that too when I was your age. It hurts like crazy, but you'll be fine." Jacob nodded, his guard softening. Though hesitant to admit it, Maya noticed that Ethan wasn't trying to impress them. He genuinely wanted to know them. After an hour, Maya called the boys in for snacks. Ethan followed them into the kitchen, where the smell of cookies brought by neighbor Clara lingered. He lingered near the door, watching Maya slice apples for the kids. "You've done a fantastic job, Maya," he said softly. "They're incredible, and that's because of you." Maya paused, her eyes cold. "I'm not doing this for praise, Ethan. I did everything for them, not to ease your guilt." He looked down, not arguing. "I know. I want you to know I see that now." That evening, after Ethan left, Maya sat with the boys in the living room, listening to them talk about their afternoon. Isaiah was excited about the book. Jacob proudly showed off the ball, but Caleb stayed quiet, hugging his crayon box. "Did you like him, Caleb?" Maya asked gently. He shook his head. "I don't know. I want to stay with you." Maya pulled him into her arms, her chest tightening with emotion. She called Sarah later and described the visit. Ethan seemed sincere, but I still don't trust him. Caleb's still scared. Sarah replied, "Take your time, Maya. If he's changing, the kids will feel it. But you're still the best mom they'll ever have." Ethan sat in his penthouse in Atlanta, staring at an old family photo album. He recalled his years under Evelyn's pressure and Lauren's subtle control. Since the trial, he had cut ties with Lauren, finally realizing she only wanted to shape his life to fit hers. He thought about Maya, her strength raising 4 boys alone. He opened his laptop and wrote an email to her, explaining how he had lived in regret and had once searched for her, but lacked the courage to face what he'd done. He wrote that, "I don't expect forgiveness, but I want to do right by the boys." He hit send, feeling slightly lighter. The next morning, Maya read the email and her emotions conflicted. She didn't reply. But she realized Ethan wasn't the cowardly man he once was. She took the boys to the park, and while they played, Isaiah suddenly asked, "Is he coming back?" "Mom." Maya smiled gently. "Maybe, sweetheart, but I'll always be here." She watched them laugh and run among the leaves, knowing that she would always be their foundation, no matter how Ethan changed. Under the gray skies of Montgomery, Alabama, a fine drizzle slicked the road leading to Maya Johnson's small home. She stood on the porch watching her 4 sons, Isaiah, Caleb, Jacob, and Daniel, laugh and play in the yard, their joy undeterred by the wet weather. But inside Maya, another storm was brewing. The legal battle with Ethan Carter, though tilting in her favor after Rose's testimony, was far from over. And Lauren Bennett, Ethan's fiancée, remained a threat. The slanderous article on social media still cast a long shadow, making her feel like the entire town looked at her suspiciously. Maya glanced at her phone, checking a message from Sarah Mitchell, her best friend and attorney. "I found the proof, Maya. Lauren paid a freelance journalist to write that article. I'm taking it to court. Stay calm." Maya exhaled, caught between relief and tension. She didn't want the boys dragged into this drama, but Isaiah's ever-curious voice had already asked. "The day before, Mom. Why do you keep checking your phone? Is something wrong?" She'd only smiled and stroked his hair. "Just a little grown-up stuff, sweetheart." But she knew she couldn't hide the truth forever. Inside Ethan Carter's penthouse in Atlanta, the air felt heavy like the moment before a storm breaks. Ethan sat on a leather chair staring through rain-speckled windows. On his laptop screen was an email from Sarah attached with damning evidence, a bank transfer from Lauren's account to a freelance reporter, accompanied by a message instructing them to smear Maya's name. Ethan clenched his fists, anger and disappointment rising in waves. After Rose's court testimony, he had suspected Lauren, but this was the final blow. He called Lauren voice cold. "You paid someone to slander Maya, didn't you?" On the other end, Lauren tried to stay calm. "What are you talking about, Ethan? I was trying to help you win custody." But her nervous tone betrayed her. "That's enough, Lauren," Ethan cut her off. "You weren't helping. You were controlling. We're done." He hung up, leaving Lauren reeling in silence. She realized too late that she had underestimated Maya and the man Ethan was becoming. Sarah arrived in Montgomery that weekend, carrying a folder of evidence. Sitting in Maya's living room, amid the clutter of toys and picture books, Sarah explained, "This will invalidate the article. We'll present it in court to show Lauren tried to sabotage your reputation." Maya nodded, though worry still lingered in her eyes. But what if Ethan still takes her side? Sarah grasped her hand. "He's changing Maya. He's already cut Lauren off. But we stay cautious." The next court session at the Montgomery County Courthouse felt taut as a wire. Dressed in a deep blue sweater, Maya sat beside Sarah, heart pounding. Ethan arrived alone this time, weary but resolute. Lauren was absent, a fact that both relieved and unsettled Maya. Judge Virginia Thompson opened the session, and Sarah rose, presenting the evidence. "Your Honor, Lauren Bennett deliberately disseminated false information to harm the reputation of Maya Johnson, a devoted mother." She handed over the bank statement and messages. The courtroom buzzed. Ethan lowered his head, jaw tight. Judge Thompson turned sharply to Attorney Bradley. "Explain this, Mr. Bradley." Bradley stammered, "My client did not know this action." Ethan stood, voice calm but heavy. "Your Honor, I had nothing to do with that article. I want to be part of my children's lives." His words startled Maya. She looked at him, searching his face. His eyes were sincere, but she wasn't ready to believe it. The judge called for a recess to review the new evidence. The article was officially invalidated, easing public pressure on Maya. She left the courtroom with Sarah feeling like she had climbed a mountain. That night back at home, she gathered the boys and told them a story about a brave little bear, softening the tension in their minds. Caleb, still shy, asked Mom, "Is that man coming back?" Maya smiled gently. "If he does, I'll make sure you're all safe." Jacob added, "If he's nice, I'll let him play soccer with me." Maya laughed, her heart just a little lighter. Later that week, Ethan came to Maya's house with a box of cookies for the boys. Standing at the door, he said awkwardly, "Maya, I'm sorry for what Lauren did. I didn't know she'd go that far. I want to do right by the boys." Maya met his eyes, still guarded. "Sorry isn't enough, Ethan. They need stability, not drama." He nodded. "I know. I'll prove it with my actions." He turned and left, leaving Maya torn between skepticism and the faintest glimmer of hope. That night, Maya received a message from Sarah Lawrence, getting slammed by the media in Atlanta. She's withdrawn from the public eye. Maya exhaled, but she knew the war wasn't over. She watched her sons sleep, thinking about her journey from abandoned bride to fearless mother. No matter how much Ethan changed, one thing remained clear. She would never let anyone threaten her family again. Spring 2026 draped Montgomery, Alabama in a fresh coat of green, as if nature welcomed Maya Johnson into a new beginning. The atmosphere in the Montgomery County Courthouse was gentler than in previous hearings. Maya, dressed in a simple sky blue dress, sat beside her best friend and attorney, Sarah Mitchell, hands clasped but eyes resolute. Across the room sat Ethan Carter, alone this time. No Lauren Bennett, no Attorney Bradley. The final hearing over the custody of the quadruplets Isaiah, Caleb, Jacob, and Daniel was about to reach its verdict. With her familiar commanding presence, Judge Virginia Thompson brought the session to order with a strike of her gavel. After reviewing the social worker's report and the evidence of Lauren's manipulation, she announced, "Primary custody is awarded to Ms. Maya Johnson. However, Mr. Ethan Carter shall have regular visitation rights and is expected to participate in co-parenting. Both parties are instructed to cooperate for the well-being of the children." Maya exhaled deeply, tears shimmering, but held back. Ethan nodded, his sea-blue eyes reflecting gratitude. They exchanged a glance, silent but full of meaning. Outside the courthouse, Maya hugged Sarah tightly. "Thank you, Sarah. I couldn't have done this without you," she said, voice thick with emotion. Sarah smiled. "You're the strongest woman I know, Maya. Now go home to your boys." Maya nodded, her heart lighter. The journey ahead still held challenges, but she had protected what mattered most, her family. Back at their cozy house on the outskirts of town, Maya threw a small celebration with her sons. Isaiah, Caleb, Jacob, and Daniel raced around the yard, kicking the ball Ethan had given them. Ms. Clara from next door brought over a tray of cornbread, while Mr. Henry, who once helped when Daniel fell ill, delivered a box of juice. The Montgomery community, as always, stood with her. As Maya sliced the cake, Isaiah asked Mom, "Whose birthday? Is it today?" Maya laughed softly. "It's the day our family gets to stay together forever, sweetheart." Caleb, the quiet one, hugged her tightly. "I like that." Ethan visited the boys that weekend, bringing a paper kite. They ran through Oak Grove Park, laughing as they tried to keep it soaring in the spring breeze. Jacob screamed in delight when it climbed high, while Isaiah helped tie the string. Caleb, still cautious, ran nearby with eyes glowing. Daniel, bold as ever, grabbed Ethan's hand. "You're good at kites." Then came an unexpected moment. Isaiah called out, "Dad, pull harder." Ethan froze, eyes glistening, but smiled and kept playing. From a distance, Maya watched her, heartwarming even if she wasn't ready to fully forgive. In the months that followed, Ethan became a consistent presence. He took Caleb to art class, helped Jacob practice soccer, read science books with Isaiah, and built puzzles with Daniel. He also began supporting Maya financially, but only with her approval. One evening after the children had gone to bed, Ethan stayed in the kitchen. "Maya, I don't expect forgiveness right away," he said gently, "but I want you to know I will never leave the boys again." Maya looked at him, her eyes softer. "I see what you're doing, Ethan, but trust takes time." Ethan invited the entire family to a wildflower field outside Montgomery one summer day. The boys ran among yellow daisies while Maya and Ethan strolled together. He paused, pulled out a small box, and opened it to reveal a simple ring. "Maya, I know I don't deserve this, but I love you and the boys. I want to try again, not just for them, but because I want a life with you." Maya stood frozen as memories of abandonment surged back. But then she looked at him, the man who had changed for their children, and felt a flicker of hope. "It won't be easy, Ethan," she whispered, her voice trembling. "But I'm willing to try." They began again slowly, but with sincerity. Ethan moved to Montgomery, working remotely to be close to the boys. Together they took the kids to school, cooked dinner, and laughed during life's simple moments. 1 year later, they held a small wedding in the backyard. Sarah stood as maid of honor. Isaiah carried the rings, Caleb scattered flower petals, Jacob mumbled through a heartfelt speech, and Daniel held his mother's hand as she walked down the aisle. When Maya and Ethan exchanged vows, she felt the pain of the past gently close behind her. That night, the children surprised their parents with a gift, a handmade album filled with drawings of their family. On the cover, in messy crayon letters, read, "Our family forever." Maya clutched the album, tears slipping down her cheeks. From the abandoned bride to steadfast mother, She had built a family rooted in love, not just by strength, grace, and forgiveness,